Welcome, everyone. Today, we're going to have Professor Daniel Kuletz, and he's going to talk about making open source education an integral part of education of curriculum in computer science programs. He has over 15 years experience at the University Bingen, and he believes that his students are the future leader, and we have to teach them how to do open source. Big applause.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, and welcome everybody. So yeah, as already introduced, I'm Daniel Kuletz, and actually I don't teach 15 years at Bingen Technical University, but at various universities throughout the last 15 years. And yeah, for those who don't know where Bingen is, who knows where Bingen is? Yeah, at least some. Yeah, so for the others, I brought this map here. And apart from our great university there, you can also enjoy the nice landscape. But that's actually not the topic of the talk. Yeah, as I said, I've been at various other universities and have quite some teaching experience. And actually, I want to use this teaching experience to reflect a bit on topics around open source. But before we start with that, first a big warning here. So this talk is a personal reflection, so it's based on my personal experience. So you should be prepared for some claims that lack some evidence, despite a professor giving this talk. Yeah, and of course, it would be really great if we had some empirical research into these things. So if anybody is interested in making a cooperation or things like that, just contact me. Yeah, and first of all, I have some questions for you. So who of you knows a person that is, just raise your hand, yeah, who's studying computer science or a closely related subject? And if you are also such a person, it's also okay to raise your hand. So please, okay. And who knows a person that is studying computer science or a closely related subject but lacks fundamental understanding about free, libre, open source software? Okay. And who knows a person with all this stuff before that has already finished studying, has a degree in something about computer science and still lacks a proper understanding about free and libre open source software? Yeah, that's actually what I was expecting, yeah, because it matches also my experience. So what I would like to talk about today, yeah, is first, or the learning objectives here are that first, you can explain maybe why fanboyism and fangirlism can impair important business decisions. Yeah, so we will go a bit into these topics. Then that maybe you are less shocked if you observe this phenomenon that people who study computer science have some lacks in understanding the FLOSS topics. That you are familiar with the things which I propose, which I suggest how we can counter that. Yeah, and that you absorbed some of the experience that I made when I tried to integrate these topics into the curriculum. Yeah, so first let's start with this fanboyism, fangirlism for proprietary software. But before we go to proprietary software, maybe just fanboys, fangirls in general. Are there any fanboys, fangirls for soccer clubs here? Soccer clubs? Yeah? Do you want to tell us which one? Borussia Dortmund, I see, okay. How about beverages? Any fanboys, fangirls of beverages? Club Mate, okay, I see. Yeah, I also have this Fritz limo here with me on purpose. Yeah. How about laptops? Anybody also cheering for, I don't know, ThinkPads or Pinebooks or whatever? No? Maybe cars, yeah. This guy, okay. And how about proprietary software? Anybody cheering for proprietary software? Yeah, but if you go outside here, out of the FrOSCon. You may find such people who are actually cheering for proprietary software, like, for instance, this teacher association. Yeah, so this teacher association, and it was not just the teachers, yeah, they demanded, we want our office or video conferencing system or whatever, a proprietary one, we want it back. Yeah, and these were teachers, pupils, parents, yeah, and from the article, I guess that they had the impression like there was a very evil data protection person who has taken away their beloved product from them and is now forcing them to use a different system. Now the question is, do you think they all have been paid by the vendor of this proprietary software to do that? Yeah, probably not. Yeah, no, they are probably just fanboys and fangirls. So what they do, in fact, is they spend their own time and money for the sake of somebody else's profits. Yeah, maybe they have some stocks of that company, so they maybe get a bit of that back. But probably, yeah, they are spending a lot of time. And yeah, the question, of course, is why do they do that? So first of all, I have looked up the definitions for fanboys, fangirls, and so on. And according to the dictionary, it says a fanboy is a male man who is obsessive about a particular subject, especially something or someone in popular entertainment media. And this fanboyism is a characteristic behavior of these fanboys, blind, aggressive devotion. Yeah, I can just think of somebody here cheering for this soccer club, for instance. Yeah, and sometimes you can even observe people really doing this for proprietary software, people who are not employed by the company that produces this proprietary software, and I personally find this remarkable. Yeah, so what are the effects of that? Well, if you look at, I don't know, soccer or beverages or whatever, yeah, this can lead to some effects that might not be desirable, but usually it only affects this person that is this fanboy or fangirl, and maybe their social environment, but overall, the impact, I would say, is limited. Yeah, and of course, it's also the people's choice. Yeah, if you like Borussia Dortmund, I would say I have no right to tell you no, but this other club is better or whatever. Yeah, that's no problem. But sometimes we allow these fanboys and fangirls to make decisions that also affect others. Yeah, for instance, somebody who manages their company's car fleet maybe is in charge of making the decisions which cars to buy, yeah, or which laptops to buy. Yeah, maybe some person says, no, we will all buy laptops from this vendor, and now everybody has to use these laptops, no matter if they like them or not. And it gets more interesting when it comes to software or services. Yeah, so we have a certain problem that we need to solve. The question is, which software do we use for that? And now this person mandates to you, you have to use this software. Yeah, and this person maybe is a fanboy, fangirl of this software, but you are not. And this is probably something where this conflict can arise. So in general, there is nothing wrong with that. Yeah, as long as these fanboys and fangirls stay in their own walled garden. But when they, and I would argue that fanboys, fangirls are biased to some degree at least about the stuff, they make decisions, yeah, and these decisions affect others. So if you're okay with these decisions, everything is fine for you. But if you're not okay with these decisions and other people make decisions for you that you don't like, this is where we get into a problem. And as I said, regarding software and services, this is something where you can see this pretty clearly. Yeah, so when these, I would call them biased decisions for certain software or services are made, the people who make these decisions, what I often observe is that they have a very narrowed focus. So they only look on the functional aspects, and maybe they also look on the UX side of things. Yeah, so they say, oh yeah, this is the software that provides these functions that I need. and it's so easy to use. Okay, and maybe sometimes they also take also costs into account. So they say, yeah, it's not so cheap, but you know, with this great user experience that really satisfies that. However, there are of course also other costs that should be taken into account here, like security. Yeah, so is the software secure, and can we audit it? Is it maintainable? Yeah. If there are changes, yeah, as you probably know, software often reflects reality. So if there are some changes that occur in reality, you have to adapt the software. And if you don't do that, the software becomes less and less useful. So maintainability is a very important thing. Now, if you have a closed source software, how do you judge the maintainability? Well, maybe not so easy. Also other things like digital sovereignty, data privacy, vendor lock-in. Yeah, can your organization stay independent? How about maybe future costs? What happens if the vendor of a certain system, I don't know, increases the monthly charges that you have to pay for their software? Yeah, what happens then? And do you take all these things into account? And my claim here is that fanboys or fangirls of certain products, they don't do that. Yeah, they are so obsessed about this, the greatness of this product, that they more or less disregard these things. Yeah, so what are the causes here? Why does this happen? And a short comic about a true story. Yeah, what we observe is lack of knowledge and practice. As also those of you who have raised their hands have expressed. Yeah, so for instance here a talk which I witnessed. Yeah, somebody asking the BO double dollar of this company, but what do I need to run your software for my company? Yeah, and the answer is simple. Don't worry too much. To run it, you just need, Linux, the operating system, and an application server. And you can get both for free because they are license-free software. So there are two things wrong in these answers. Who can spot them? What's wrong in these answers? Sorry? Yeah, which distro goes in the right direction, maybe? So is Linux an operating system? It's just a kernel. Yeah, you need more to make an operating system. And the question is it license-free? Is Linux license-free software? Or does it have a license? Yeah, of course, it has a license. Yeah, and if I see people making such statements, that's already an alarming sign that they maybe have not understood these things. And in fact, or not in fact, in my assumption, people are really puzzled about free and libre open source software. And we see this a lot when we look at the behavior of politicians. However, even these people who should know it better, people in computer science, yeah, then they struggle to name this 4 essential freedoms that make free software free. They can't explain how the copyleft principle works. They think that FLOSS is produced by some unemployed hobbyists who are fed by their parents and spend a lot of time in the garage because they don't have to earn the money for their living. Yeah, or they argue that free and libre open source software is just for the poor. So I've talked to one CEO who said like, yeah, well, okay, we could use LibreOffice. But you know how much money we are spending already to rent the office, to do this, to do that. We don't have to save money. We can buy the real office. Yeah, we can afford that. Yeah, and this already shows that, they think about, when they think about FLOSS, they think about the price, and that's basically it. And they say, oh, maybe it's free, but the quality is so bad, so we better choose a different product. Yeah, so what could be the reasons? Why are people behaving like that? So I would say, from my observations, yeah, this is something, if you look in university curriculums, you look at what the students are taught there, sorry, you don't find mentions of open source software in too many of these module handbooks. Now, maybe lecturers just take this for granted. They think like, okay, if somebody has enrolled for computer science, that person certainly knows these things, so we don't have to explain them. Or maybe they just consider it irrelevant. Yeah, software licenses and stuff like that. Is this really important later for the job? No, of course not. But actually, I don't know why this topic is not covered. There are just some assumptions. Maybe the next one is a possible explanation. Also, again, my personal observation is that the teachers, they don't understand it either. Yeah, so I have, or I know even professors teaching at computer science faculties who tell the students things like, you know, open source can never work, or yeah, you can use open source for your hobby, but if you run your business, please never try using any things that are open source. It will never work. You will get into trouble. It always has bad quality, and so on and so on. So this could be another reason. And there is, of course, also the indoctrination. Yeah, so maybe some of you are teachers or lecturers. Maybe some of you know teachers and lecturers. I think one common thing among them is that they are lazy. Yeah, and companies or vendors of proprietary software, they know that, and they try to make use of that. So, for instance, they offer free training for lecturers. So, personally, I've also been at a seminar of a chip vendor, 3-day seminar about parallel multi-programming stuff. And of course, you only use the vendor's special tools there, and so on and so on. And the vendor also provides teachers then with teaching material, yeah, like slides, exercises, even exam questions to make your job easier so that you will teach your students how to use their proprietary software. Yeah, or what you also probably know is having these heavily discounted edu licenses and stuff. And so on and so on, free services, or if you're an educational institution, you can use our service for free, and so on. Yeah, so they really have an increased interest of getting the students to use their products. And another thing is also market dominance. So if you have a product that reaches a significant market share, or even dominates the market, yeah, or in a certain, I don't know, monopoly or duopoly situation, then also the teachers and the lecturers who teach subjects where this tool is dominant, yeah, think about, I don't know, ERP systems or whatever, then they are also tempted to teach how to use these tools in their courses. And the conflict that's underlying here is probably that on the one hand, lecturers, maybe some lecturers, try to stay independent from commercial vendors of software. On the other hand, they also have the job to qualify the students for the job later on. Yeah? And now if they only teach them some product with a market share of 0.001%, and the students then, I don't know, do some internship, go to some company, and they see, no, the company runs a different software, then maybe, yeah, they will not know how to do it. So this is always a challenge. And I've also seen extreme cases, maybe they are not really extreme, but maybe they go a bit further, where lecturers really teach how to use certain proprietary software in a course, often in electionary modules. And then they even have an exam where they check whether the students learned how to properly use this proprietary software. And personally, I find this problematic, but it could explain why we see these effects. Any questions so far? Okay, so let's have a look at possible countermeasures. Yeah, so is there something we can do about that? And as I stated already in the abstract, the students of today are the decision makers of tomorrow. Yeah, and we as a society, and especially the lecturers, I think we should have an interest in making sure that people who make decisions make them on a well-informed basis. Yeah? So they really know what they talk about when they have to select a new software for doing this and that, and they have different offers, and now they want to evaluate them and so on. That they know all the facts that they need to make such an informed decision. And this basically prohibits any kind of fanboyism or fangirlism here in this regard. Yeah, so I would say that students actually must understand the implications of selecting a free and libre open source software and selecting a proprietary software product. And not one-sided, like everything that's free and libre open source is always best and this is always very, very bad. Yeah, but to really think about possible pros and cons and make informed decisions. So especially if the lecturer is, let's say, a fanboy or fangirl, and since I'm giving this talk here in the cheering for open source session here, I would say probably I'm biased here in this regard. Yeah, then I think it's important also to make this conflict transparent. Yeah, so this is also what I tell my students regularly at the end of, not at the end, at the beginning of the lectures, or at the, if I get a new seminar, for instance, that actually I'm a person that supports free and open source software, and that they should keep this in mind when I make certain statements, that these statements might be a bit biased. Yeah, now the question is, what can you do as teachers, or what am I trying to do as a teacher to avoid these issues? So first thing is that my understanding about teaching is that I try to teach methods, I try to teach approaches or principles. I don't know, I'm trying to explain how continuous integration works. That's my job. Yeah, what the principles are, what the goals are, what the benefits are, and so on. And it's not my job to explain how certain specific pipelines work in a certain specific software product. Yeah? Of course, you need these tools to explain things, otherwise things remain completely in the theoretical space. But the focus here should be really these principles that are common for a class of different tools, and not teaching the tools themselves. Yeah? Staying independent from any tool or service vendors, maybe just as a small test. Yeah? Let's assume I'm always teaching how to do continuous integration with Jenkins. Yeah? And now Jenkins disappears from the screen. Will I be able to still hold the course? Yes. All the principles and everything will stay the same. I will just use a different tool to showcase them. Also, I try to avoid tools that only run on one operating system, because this is also a bit of discrimination for students who use a different operating system. And I never force students to accept malicious license agreements. And since I'm biased, I would not state that the GPL, for instance, is a malicious license agreement. But I tried, and I really don't do that, that I tell my students, look, you have to download this software, and for that you have to sign this contract, or you have to provide these and these personal details to this company so you can get the software and you can follow my course. I think this is something we should avoid. And when it comes to services, in my opinion, it's good to only use services that are also self-hostable. From my experience, students, or many students, will never host these tools themselves. They will probably just use the service that's there. But maybe there are some who think like, no, I want to do this myself, and then they are able to do that. Now when it comes to teaching the content, the things that should be in the curriculum, so I think what should be there, and it's also what I'm doing, is this topic of public domain and licenses. So if you have created a software, you want to share the software with others, why should you put a license to the software? And what could happen if you don't do that? Of course, in Germany especially, you can't go too much into detail because only lawyers are allowed to talk about these things. But to some degree, I think you can discuss that. Also, business models. How do business models for proprietary software works? How do they work? What are common limitations? What's the model how proprietary software vendors are trying to make money? What kind of things like limiting the users or the installations or whatever? What are the concepts that they follow there? How did free and open source software actually come to existence? Now, what kind of open source licenses do we have there? What can we put them in certain classes? What are the main differences? Now, assume you created a great piece of software that you now want to share with others. What are the practical steps? How would you publish your software on some code hosting platform or whatever? And of course, also the business models around free and libre open source software. And this is always something where some students look very surprised. You can make money with free software? Really? How does that work? I'm sure you guys probably know how it works. So I have a slide here with some common, let's say, monetization models, and I think at almost every FrOSCon there is always at least one talk discussing these things, so this is only just a small selection, but maybe we can try to make a quiz. Maybe I will name two free and open source software projects, and the question for you is, what model do you think are they using? So let's start with OpenBSD. What's the model they are using? Sorry? The first two, no, they used to use selling media in the past, but I think selling media is not a model that works very well since a few years already. Maybe a bit too tough for a first question, no? They actually charge for binary builds. So you can buy a subscription to get the latest security updates for the stable releases, and otherwise you only get binary builds for the bleeding edge or the whatever is their main repository where the new stuff lands. And of course, if you're running an operating system in for some critical infrastructure, you don't want to run the latest bleeding edge version, and probably you also don't want to run certain CI pipelines to build the operating system, but you just want to have the binary builds, and this is how they make money. Okay, maybe a easier one, GitLab. What's their model? Sorry? Hosting, hosting is one thing. Yeah, service dual licensing. Yeah, and I would also say open core is also part of it, because if you want to have it, there are some enterprisey features for which you have to pay licenses, and there are other features which are like in the open core. Yeah. Okay, I have one more, but maybe that's also a hard one. SQLite. Sorry? Contract work. I think they are one of the few that do this thing here, but I'm not sure. So don't cite me for that. Yeah, but I think they have the strategy of keeping tests closed source. So everybody can basically fork their code and work on it. But if you don't have the tests, then you have a hard time. Sorry? They don't accept patches. I don't know. So of course, this is also some kind of, let's say, misunderstanding between some companies. Yeah. So there are companies which have this kind of from time to time we throw some code over the wall policy, and then they call this open source. But there's not really a community process there. Yeah. So that's another thing. Yeah, but unfortunately, we don't have a regular lecture here, so we can't go into all of these models. But I think it's something that I would welcome. Yeah, if more students that studied computer science, they would know about these models, and they would know how typical open source projects, which have big companies behind them, how they make their money. Yeah. So another thing. What we should do, I think, is to encourage students really to publish their work. So usually I don't do that in compulsory modules, yeah, because you can't really force somebody to, you have to publish your code, otherwise you won't get a grade or whatever. Yeah, but what I do, let's say, to build up some other incentives here, is that, yeah, I use software from students in the past. Yeah, so there were students who studied, I don't know, 5 years ago, then they created some kind of software, and now we use the software in the lecture, or we have even an exercise about, I don't know, finding technical debt in the architecture, and we analyze this source code which they produced. If they never shared their source code, I wouldn't be able to integrate it in my courses. Yeah, so maybe some students will think like, oh wow, if now we make this great product, then all the future generations will look at our great source code. Maybe, yeah. Also, when I have any thesis, yeah, like bachelor thesis, master thesis, and so on, I usually tell the students that I expect these results to be published. And I say no to projects which help only to grow closed ecosystems. So recently, I have a request from a school. So they wanted to have a workshop about app programming for their pupils. Yeah? So they wanted to visit us and have like a one-day workshop. And they proposed one of these two closed ecosystems. And I just said, no, I'm not going to spend the state money for the sake of teaching people how to help to grow the ecosystem of a certain vendor. I'm not getting paid for that. If I would reject that. Yeah, and it also would be, especially in such a duopoly situation, unfair for the other vendor. Yeah, and of course for all people who try to do something which is open for all. Yeah, so I told them, okay, we can do that, but we will make a workshop about progressive web apps, and this was fine for them as well. Yeah, and there is also the very evil trick, which I sometimes also used, is if you make student work that builds upon other student work, and this previous student work was licensed, for instance, under the GPL, then you have these things that former CEO of a company called the cancer, the GPL, the evil cancer that creeps in and you can't get rid of it, right? Yeah, so basically, if you make students extend work that is already under GPL, it has to be GPL again. Simple as that. Questions so far? No questions? Okay. So I'd like to show you some sort of lighthouse project. So I have really supervised lots and lots of student software projects, so most of them have been published as free and open source software. And I would like to show you some of them. Of course, not all of them. It would be just too many to show you. Let's quickly go through that. So we have the system test portal, which I also presented here at FrOSCon, which helps to manage test suites, manual tests, and so on. Initially written in Golang, then we had some work that ported it to Rust, and there I hope the development will continue. Ravager, which is a tool to plan and execute technical reviews, so you have sort of way to assign aspects. For instance, if you do a review of a software requirement specification, assign respects to the reviewers, plan the meeting, and so on. Very old, since 2009. Yeah, and since 2009, so many students used this tool. Yeah, that these students built there, because there are not many others that can keep up with it. Also, a rather recent tool implemented as a progressive web app. Review Org Reloaded. This covers more the thing on the lecturer side. So if you organize technical reviews, you have the problem that you need to have 5 reviews running in parallel in certain rooms, and people, of course, can't be booked to the same slot at the same time. They have to be in certain roles, and so on and so on. We had a very hacky Java Swing app before, and then we supervised a project where this was revamped. That's why it's called Reloaded here. Right? And we get a new nice tool that I can use since then. Also, the spreadsheet inspection framework. So this is more a research project for my dissertation. And actually, I had 12 students who worked during the course for several years. So usually one student picked up the work of another, and so on, which helped me to have this tool for evaluating my approach. A rather recent project, FreeLab Orga, that's an application for managing university labs. So if you're a professor or a lecturer, you have some kind of lab, and then you have items in your lab. You need to have an inventory. Maybe students can borrow these items. You want to know who borrowed it, who brought it back, and so on and so on. If you're interested in that, it's written in Rust and has a front end with plain vanilla JS. This is also what people have always been complaining. Oh, why can't we use the great frameworks? Because I'm trying to teach you the basics, okay? And then BitBlink, yeah? So maybe some of you have these nice name badges here. Yeah, somebody, no? Maybe you've seen somebody here at the conference, or some people selling these name badges. So usually there is just an application for Android, at least an open source application, where you can program actually these badges. And I was a bit unhappy about that it's only available for Android. So we made a project with students who have written an application in Rust, using libadwaita, GTK4. You can even run it on the Mac or on Linux Mobile, and you can use it to program these badges. And last but not least, also a project where we made a program for managing student assistants in the faculty. So we had more than, I think, 100 student assistants per semester, and it was always, with budgeting and all the management there, which was previously done in a spreadsheet, and we wanted to have a better software for that. So, we could use the results here of a student project. And as I said, there would be many others to mention, But of course, probably you didn't see really one very popular big open source project here that you already have known about for years. Yeah, but rather maybe, or I guess, did anybody recognize one of these systems? No, okay, I was expecting that. Yeah, so this brings me to the challenges. Yeah, so why haven't these tools grown very big? Well, the major issue here is if you do these FLOSS projects with students, well, the basic motivation for them is to get their grade, of course. Yeah. So what do you think will happen after they got their grade? The commits go down to 0. Yeah. Sometimes there are even a few more commits, but at least if you wait, let's say 1 or 2 months, then the project is really completely dead. And now, what can you do about it? So a few things that I've tried. Yeah, so you can organize these follow-up projects, yeah, like I did, for instance, with the system test portal and others. The problem is that then you, as the lecturer, you become the main driver behind this project. Yeah, so you always have to push it. You always have to make new projects which build upon this work and so on. If you don't do something because you don't have the time, maybe, then again the project is dead. Yeah, so you're basically resurrecting this project over and over again. Doesn't feel really right. Yeah. Then you can make students create something that is so useful that after the students created this thing, it becomes the great solution, like hopefully BitBlink, yeah, for programming the LD badges, that a big community will emerge and other people will contribute, and this will motivate the students to go on in their project. Or maybe somebody else will even fork this thing and then it will live on. That's another thing. And the last one is to give students just much more freedom regarding the topic. So this is what we also tried in the Rust programming courses, where students basically can find a project, propose a project which they want to work on, and the hope here is that they make something that is useful for them as well, and which will motivate them to contribute to the project also in the future. Yeah, so these are the possible solutions, but unfortunately, there's no silver bullet. Yeah, so I tried all of these suggestions which I put up here, and I was not really successful in that. Yeah, so in none of these projects I have really achieved some kind of person who has emerged as the maintainer of this project, making it alive for the years to come. But I'm sure, or let's say I hope, that you did better, and if you did, please tell me, either on the lecturer or on the student side, yeah, what would be a great project for you so you would stay motivated to go on. So I warmly welcome your suggestions. But before that, I have a quick summary. So, as I said, the students of today are the decision makers of tomorrow, so we have to avoid any kind of one-sided fanboyism and fangirlism in here. And we have to make these things about open source, like the business models and licenses and how communities work and so on, part of computer science studies, because this is something that many students will probably also face later in their job. And this enables them to make well-informed, or let's say better informed decisions. Yeah, so encouraging them to maybe publish their work as open source can help, because at least once in their life, then they have been through the process. They know how to add a license to a project. Maybe they have to decide which license they have to, I mean, not maybe, but for sure, they have to decide which license they want to attach to their project. And of course, to make a decision, or informed decision, you have to look at these licenses, and then you learn what the particular differences here are. And And yeah, the big challenge here is to find a way how to make these projects sustainable. But personally, I don't think that this is really like the deal breaker here. So even if you make a project that just ends up being a repo in some, ends up as just some code on some public repo, it's still much better than if you did a student project that ends up as a CD in your drawer. Yeah, and with that, I would like to thank you and welcome any questions. Yeah.
First of all, thank you. Very interesting talk. So I have also some experience as a teacher here at the university for open source projects as well. And I think you skipped an important part in your thinking about how to do open source projects. You try to educate students to become an open source project maintainer. I would say let's teach them first to become an open source project contributor. And I think it is more important for the students, especially in the bachelor courses, to learn to contribute to bigger or already established open source projects, because then they can better understand how open source software works, do a pull request, probably it get merged, what does it take to get a pull request merged, how to see the ecosystem work, etc., etc. So from the theses which I supervised, we made at least a few good merge requests to bigger projects, Network Simulator 3, the Linux kernel, some drivers for some open source software and software-defined radio. And this was an enlightened process, because then they can see their name as a contributor in a very big and known open source project. And few students then keep working as being contributors there. I think this is probably, you wanted the silver bullet. This is not a silver bullet, but it's another idea, which I believe is, a first step.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, that's actually a very good point. I didn't actually think so much about it. If I recall it, I actually had one student that we had in the Rust course that did an upstream contribution to some medical library or whatever. But yeah, if I just think about what you said, probably it's really much easier to contribute to some project. Of course, it's a bit maybe of a challenge that if you don't control the project, how can you make sure that nobody else contributes there and so on. But also I have an open or starting bachelor thesis at the moment, and there also is a student who wants to enhance an existing project. But I think you are really right that this, I'm trying to make them two steps or two steps at once. And maybe the first step would be first to contribute before you take the second step to really start or maintain your own project. Yeah, thank you. So other questions, suggestions? Yeah.
Okay. So additional comments. But we do not want to be boring for the other people. That you said in your faculty it's not in the curriculum. This whole
as a professor, I can put things in the curriculum of my lectures, and usually you can discuss this also with your colleagues. But what I mean is, when I look at other universities and I look through their courses, what they have there, then these are always these topics that, I would say people think, this is important, somebody should be teaching it. And maybe lecturer A thinks lecturer B would teach it, and lecturer B thinks lecturer C would teach it, and in the end, nobody teaches it.
We have some similar experiences here, but at least in the bachelor course, we have a dedicated course on IT Recht here in this university. It's called, where also free and open source software is, of course, an important part, licensing stuff, etc., etc. So we have a dedicated thing here, and this always, of course, the persons who are in charge can say this needs to be in the curriculum, right? So we can make an impact here by saying more people, this is an important thing, we need this in the curriculum as a dedicated thing.
Yeah, but probably, or sadly maybe, as the university that host this conference, you might be a bit biased.
A little bit.
And so my experience is, that of course I didn't say that, or I didn't want to say that no university has these things in the curriculum. But my impression is that not very many have that actually. Maybe you can't know if maybe they still teach the topics to some degree, but for me, it would be something that I would consider really essential for any people who finished a computer science degree to know something about open source or free software in general. Other questions or comments?
I see just another reason that the staff persons of an organization want to use non-free software. They know my organization paid for this software, and when they know this, the organization paid for it, it makes themselves worthful. I think this is a feeling I often regarded. They want to have the worth to pay the organization for the software.
But you mean that they got the software for free and now they have to be thankful?
They don't want to use free software because they think, my organization only uses free software. We are not worth paying for the software.
Like we are too poor. Like this CEO, I'm not that poor that I have to use this.
We are not worth spending money for our software.
Mm-hmm. I see, Yeah, probably a good point, thank you. So, more comments, questions?
Very short comment, probably at the end. I think there's a huge need in the academia in Germany, especially in the University of Applied Sciences, also in the university, to come together to build open source projects. Because I think each University of Applied Sciences is working on their own projects, as you mentioned with your lab organizing, etc., etc. But we could really make a difference with bigger open source projects if we find people at different universities saying, this is a good idea, let's work together. You could do the software engineering, another person could do the security auditing, another person could do the cloud infrastructure, etc., etc. And there is, at least from my point of view, really a lack of people from different universities talking about these ideas. We are not solving this closely before the end of this day, but probably something for the future.
I could not agree more, and of course I'm welcome for any cooperation. So if you have some ideas or you are looking for some nice open source software to audit, to make some pen testing, I think I have some examples to share. Okay.
So picking up from the previous comment, and just because I'm the non-related IT person, just trying to mix this also, because I'm not German, so also I have this bias that I know the university system works differently here. You are to silo it, to compartmentalize it. So social sciences are a good way to test whether you can see this difference in your students with flaws. So go to some social science teacher and ask for their help, get some assistant or PhD or bachelor or master student to do this work. But also to teach digital sovereignty is actually to teach more about politics and ethics, and that surely needs someone, and of course the legal side. The technical university is small, I know, and then much more complicated, but if you get everyone together, then it means that you also need to think about this other side of the sciences.
I agree. And so in the past, I also, for instance, did a course about data literacy with colleagues, so from different fields. Although I did cover the sovereignty part and data protection part and so on. But I think there are different sides, especially if you talk with people who do data analytics, which may be a bit of a challenge for privacy on the other hand. yeah, I think this is also not just something that we should tackle in two computer science professors talking with each other, but also talking with people from different disciplines. And yeah, this is also what I'm trying to do. Yeah, currently we also have applied for a funding with two colleagues, which are very far outside from computer science. And through all these things, and of course, I told them, well, you can welcome me on board, but only if we make this open source. And this was okay for them. And I think also by that, they also learn a bit more about how these things work, or what makes people create software and share it for free and so on. Yeah. Okay.
We still got 5 minutes, so we can still answer some question.
Or you could be the first ones in the queue for the dinner. Huh?
No more questions. Thank you very much.
Welcome.